Bulldogs, that game flew by early. A 7-3 halftime lead for Texas A&M, and they win 31-9. Blake Shapen was 15 of 20 for a touchdown and an interception. Fluff Bothwell, who got injured in the game, more on that coming up in a little bit, 60 yards on 14 carries. Booth had almost 60, 59 on 8 carries. Mississippi State only ran for 77 yards total in the game if you factor in sack yardage. Brennan Thompson had a couple of catches for 54 yards and the 1 touchdown. Anthony Evans, 5 catches for 41. Aiden Williams, his most catches of the season, right, with 3. Got more playing time, as you talked about, going into the game for 25 yards. On the other side, Marcel Reed was okay in the game, 13 of 23, 180 yards, couple touchdowns, 1 interception. But the story was A&M's running the football. 51 carries for 303 yards against Mississippi State, including 142 from Reuben Owens in the game, a pair of touchdowns there as well. Mario Craver led the Aggies in receiving, 80 yards on 6 catches. So, hey, Dad, where do we start here on this game? I mean, everybody's pointing to Shapen, but I don't think that's particularly fair to him. Now, he wasn't perfect, don't get me wrong, but I think it's more about the guys in front of him that were the bigger issue.
Yeah, Shapen didn't play great. There's no getting around that. But at the same time, State's offensive line right now is just a sieve. It's just not good. Injuries have really hurt them. You know, you go back to the game 1 against Southern Mississippi. Your starting tackles were Albert Reese and Blake Steen. Steen's out for the year, and Reese was out for this game. Jimothy Lewis also did not play in this game. That would have been State's second left tackle from the Southern Mississippi game. I don't think that's an injury issue. I just don't think he's playing very well, and they don't feel comfortable putting him out there on the field. And that tells you something when you consider how poor the rest of those guys are playing, that if Lewis can't get on the field, I mean, he's just behind. State, I think offensively their game plan wasn't great because they just kind of went out there with the idea of, well, this is what we have, so let's run the offense, instead of this is what we have, we might need to make some changes in how we run the offense. You know, Booth and Bothwell combined for I think they had 19 carries. I mean, they average over 5 yards a carry. They need more. They need more. You know, State ran the ball 31 times, but 7 of those are Shapen runs, and that includes your sacks. So that's not the balance that State needs. I said in the offseason, and I said it a million times, this needs to be a run-heavy football team. That's where their strength is. They're not as strong in the passing game and pass protection, but I think they can run the ball and run block. State needs to look more into that. So that's where it went wrong for State. Defensively, you know, gosh, never thought you'd be saying this after what we saw last year, but played well enough to win. The final score does not indicate how well the defense played. They just ran out of gas because they were on the field the entire game. And I thought Hutzler had a really good game plan. That's 2 weeks in a row where I feel like defensively, even though they've given up they gave up last week's 41 points, right? But 7 of that's in overtime, and 14 of that are defensive touchdowns from Tennessee. They only gave up 20 points in that game. This week they gave up 31, but defensively they're just so much better than they were a year ago. And this is a game where I put it on Levy and the offense, right? And I said this on the podcast, so I'll say it here. When you hire a coach like Jeff Levy with his resume and what he's known for, you do not expect to lose games where you only score 9 points and you have 250 yards of total offense, right? I've been saying it for the whole time with Levy. It's like, I expect to lose shootouts. You know, if you lose 38-35, nobody really cares, right? They're like, A&M's just better. But 9 points, that's not a good look for Jeff Levy, and he's got to spend this bye week trying to figure out what his offense can and cannot do before they end the stretch run.
I thought there were a couple of things that were evident. One, I don't know if we've given Texas A&M enough credit, especially on the defensive side,
they're a good team.
for just how good they are. You know, they gave up points to Notre Dame, but in the last 2 games, this is a mind-boggling stat. In the last 2 games, Auburn and Mississippi State have combined to go 1 for 23 on third down. They get off the field on the defensive side.
Well, and the Notre Dame game was on the road, and C.J. Carr's legit. I mean, that was a really good win, and they played well in that game. So, I mean, I'm with you. I think Marcel Reed leaves some to be desired, though, at the position. They talked about how much improvement he's made as a passer, and then after they do that, he sails a couple of guys and is just That if Texas A&M loses games, I think it'll be because that's the spot where they're the weakest. Because you're right, on the lines of scrimmage, dudes. In the back end of the defense, dudes. I mean, wide receivers, 2 dudes. Running back, they got a dude there too. I think they're limited at the spot where you want to least be limited.
Yeah. I thought their speed really jumped off the page. I mean, you kind of think about that on the offensive side. Obviously, they've got multiple guys that can run the rock, and Reuben Owens had a big night. Marcel Reed is really fast, and I do think he moves around pretty well. I agree with you that there's is there more development there? Because if there is, if he continues to grow, let's say that he's in college for 2 more years, then you could look up and have something that's pretty special. Mm-hmm. A couple of years from now. Still a relative. Is he a third-year sophomore? Is that right? Or was last year his first year in college? I can't remember.
He is listed as a sophomore, so he'd be a third-year sophomore.
Okay. And played about half the season last year? He wasn't the starter the whole way last season, was he?
He had 240 pass attempts a year ago and 144 already this season. So I'll get the game by game here in just a second.
I mean, you don't have to do that, but
because Weigman was the starter to start the year last year, right?
Yeah,
Weigman.
Yeah,
Weigman. But I mean, it's still a relatively young quarterback, but there's some skill there. Obviously, they can fly at wide receiver, but I thought the defense looked really, really fast. And boy, I don't know that it was about kicking a field goal versus scoring a touchdown on that second drive of the game for Mississippi State, but it did feel like a little bit of a gut punch to march it down the field the way they did. And, hey, that was largely on the ground, right, on that drive where Mississippi State had so much success. I do think A&M made some adjustments that made it harder for Mississippi State to run the football, whether it was numbers in the box or whatever that they did. But to march it down the field and then get it to the 1 yard line, and it was 3rd and goal from the 1, I think it was, and then you have the false start. You bring Mario Taylor in. He's waiting for the snap and doesn't get it, and then one of the offensive linemen moves. Actually, I think you had the left tackle move and the right tackle move, even though I think it was the right tackle that was called for the false start there. And then you go back to Chapin, and they forced the errant throw, and you have to settle for the field goal. And I think that's a little bit of a gut punch there after that kind of a drive.
Especially when you think about that drive, Booth breaks free and the turf monster gets him on what should have been like a 50-yard touchdown. That's really tough.
Go score there.
See, that's going to be a score, and then I can't prove it obviously, but I have to believe that 3rd and 1 from the goal line, Kamari Taylor's getting in. He's just too big and strong almost to keep out. And you have a false start, which we're talking about a pet peeve of mine. It's like it's 3rd and goal from the 1. What do we do? Just snap the ball? Get out of break the huddle, snap the ball, move forward. Why are we having any pre-snap motion whatsoever? There's no throwing anybody off there. So that was tough. But then you get a big goal line stand, and you've got some momentum, and you just can't do anything with it from that point. And then it's the same thing every week with State. And I keep saying this: they're not good enough to make a lot of mistakes and win. And you have a play where it looks like it's going to be a touchdown, but he gets his arm hit and it turns into an interception. You miss a tackle here. You have a bad penalty there. And that's just the story of State's season is they pile up mistakes, and they aren't so talented that they can just overcome those mistakes. And that's how the game ends up the way that it does. It reminded me a lot, and somebody brought this up to me. Remember Moorhead's first year when they played Kentucky? In that game, they couldn't protect Fitzgerald in that game, but it was close, and it was close, and it was close, and then finally it wasn't. And Kentucky just ran away with it. It was kind of a similar vibe on Saturday night, that it was just close, but then eventually Texas A&M takes over.
You talked a little bit about the defense just being gassed at the end of the ball game, and it looked like that. I don't think there's any question. How about this? So time of possession, 38-17 for A&M, 21-43. Sometimes that stat doesn't matter a whole lot if you're just scoring really, really fast and, whatever. When it's 17 minutes different, it probably matters.
That's when you know.
Listen to the breakdown. So State had the ball 9:26 in the first quarter. After that, they had it 3:33 in the second, 5:33 in the third, and 3:11 in the fourth.
You can't keep a defense effective when your offense is holding the football for that little amount of time.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. I can't do the math exactly, but that's basically 23 minutes in the second and fourth quarters for Texas A&M to 6:40 for Mississippi State.
There's
Not
a
a win
ball
like
game.
that. Yeah, 100%.
Stats that tell the story, that's the stat that tells the story of the game.
Yeah. Well, and it's part of the depth conversation about Mississippi State, right? The first group for Mississippi State on both sides of the ball is significantly upgraded from where they were a year ago. But when you get beyond that first group, you don't have three defensive linemen that you can run in and keep those guys fresh constantly throughout the course of the game. And you certainly don't have it on the offensive line at this point.
The offensive line. We got one question, why did Texas A&M's look, physically more impressive than Mississippi State's? Why are they in the situation that they're in? Things like that. I mean, it's multi-layered, right? Number one, I think you've seen across college football, getting quality offensive line plays increasingly more difficult. The transfer portal is not helping that. There's a line of thinking that quality offensive linemen are just harder to find, that they're just not there anymore. More guys are playing defense at that size than they used to, and so on. And two of Mississippi State's expected starters were not available in the game as well. Isn't it kind of all of the above?
I mean, the biggest thing is the injuries, right? I mean, State's offense against Tennessee looked totally different from when the time Albert Reese goes out to the time he's in. And it's weird that a right tackle makes such a big impact, but for whatever reason he does. And I mean, that's a testament to how good a player Albert Reese has been for Mississippi State this year. But the other side of that coin is, what does Texas A&M's offensive and defensive line recruiting look like over the last 5 years versus Mississippi State's? And I'm not trying to make a whole they have more money and State can't compete. I don't buy into that for 1 second. But State's, I went into real detail on the podcast. I listed every lineman State has signed since they signed Charles Cross. And 20-plus guys, there's one blue-chip guy in there. His name is Jimothy Lewis. That's the only 4-star offensive lineman you've signed in that time frame since 2019. So it shouldn't be. I mean, there have been some guys who ended up being good in there. Albert Reese is one of them. But when you sign guys who don't have a lot of SEC offers, you probably shouldn't be overly surprised when they aren't good SEC football players. And most of those guys aren't even on the roster anymore. So State just is. They're at a talent deficit. They were at a much bigger one last year at this time, but they are still less talented than. I mean, when we look at this SEC schedule, they're probably less talented than 7 of the 8 teams they're going to play. Arkansas might be the only one where they're close, but they're certainly less talented than Texas A&M. And it goes back to what we talked about last week, where sometimes you just lose to a better team. State didn't help themselves at all, and that's why the game wasn't as close as it was against Tennessee. Against Tennessee, they made their own. They took advantage of some opportunities. They made their own breaks. They had some big plays. In this game, they did not. And that's why the game was out of hand.
How do you marry the offensive line struggled in this game, obviously, with what Blake Shapen did versus didn't do, and then, of course, you're going to get this, and it's fan behavior, but the calls to replace Blake Shapen. Intertwine all of those things at the same time for me.
Well, I think the way Shapen plays is connected to the offensive line, because even when he did have time to throw, I think sometimes you see ghosts out there, right? You're just used to being under pressure. But State's offensive line is its biggest problem right now. If State could protect Shapen, they would be in a much better situation. It's hard to believe that, but like if State just had good tackles, they would probably be 5-1. They might not be 6-0, but they would probably have beaten Tennessee if they just had somebody who could have blocked a little better on the blind side of Blake Shapen. If they had Charles Cross, they would be 5-1. I really believe that. And then with Camario, what I will say is this: and I said it last week, they're not changing quarterbacks. Just you don't need to have that idea in your head. It's because it's not going to happen. You're just going to make yourself mad. But you can't say you can't not redshirt him and then only give him. I mean, he didn't even get a snap because the one time they brought him on the field, there was a penalty. They've got to find plays and situations. I know Lebby said they were going to let the situations dictate that. No. You're the offense. You dictate the situation. 2nd and 6, Camario, go in. Run this play. I don't care if it's just a quarterback power and you get 2 or 3 yards and set up a 3rd and 3, 3rd and 2, whatever. He's got to play more. He needs more snaps. You cannot just sit there and say, well, we're not going to redshirt him, but he played 2 plays against Tennessee. He technically didn't play a single play against Texas A&M because of the penalty. That's not acceptable. That's where Levy has to figure something out and find ways to get him in the game and make him productive, because he can be a productive player and he can help you win games.
Do you see the comments from Bo Pribula? Is that how we? It's not Pribula. It's Pribula.
Yeah, Pribula
at Missouri.
Sure.
He was. You did? No.
Pribula Oblongata.
Oh,
Pribula,
you're just,
yeah. I was agreeing with the name pronunciation.
Yeah. He actually talked about that role that he played at Penn State a year ago, and there are a lot of people at Penn State that would love to have Pribula right now instead of Drew Aller as their quarterback, and I think we probably could have told you that a while ago. Mm-hmm. But he was asked about that kind of going in and out and having a package and, rolling. He goes, it's really, really hard to get into a rhythm. He said, because me going in at times might knock Drew out of his rhythm, and it felt like there was a ton of pressure every time I went in the game. Boy, you better not make a bad play and mess up the rhythm of the offense or what they're doing or the way that it's going. I do think that there's something to that. And, are you really better with a 2nd and 6 play call with Kamario Taylor in the game than you are with Blake Shapen, to use your example from a second ago? I think what I envisioned for Taylor was what the way Florida used Tim Tebow as a freshman when they had Chris Leak, who had been around forever and was the quarterback of that team. But Florida doesn't have the season that they have without Tim Tebow. Now, I know that's a little apples and oranges, because they had a lot of times that they were down around the goal line or a lot of 3rd and shorts or 4th and shorts where they rolled him in. I loved bringing him in on that 3rd and 1 call down around the goal line. I'm like you, hey, Dad. I mean, maybe A&M would have voted up and they would have kept him out of the end zone. But giving him the ball with an extra blocker going downhill to try and get a yard felt like a pretty high percentage play for Mississippi State. And everybody in the stadium knew what was coming.
Yeah.
I mean, unless they were going to do something weird with like some kind of, jump pass to the tight end or something like that where he faked the run, I don't think that's what they were doing there. I think they were getting ready to run quarterback power with the motion guy as a lead blocker, an extra blocker on that right side, and it didn't work out. You mess the play up and you pull him out. And I was thinking when you were talking about offensive linemen back a year and a half ago at the Mississippi State spring game that Cole and I did. And even then, in year one, and outside of Albert Reese, you don't really have any of those offensive linemen that are still playing anything significant. Jimothy Lewis was there then, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You had,
but there was a long way.
Jacoby Jackson was starting then and is starting now. But, kind of a weird move last night, though. Like or Saturday night, they moved him. They switched guards. They flipped the right guard and the left guard, and I don't really. I heard Levy's explanation for it. He said something about communication, but I didn't quite get it.
Well, I guess the point that I was going to make was with that first 5 a year ago, they thought, well, we got a chance if these guys play well, but behind them, there's not much there. And they have upgraded talent on the offensive line, but they've had 2 significant injuries on the offensive line, and they're kind of back in the exact same spot in year 2 where, okay, with that first group, yeah, we actually feel pretty good about these 5 guys. But Steen's out of the mix, and Albert Reese. Do you think he's back when they play Florida in a week?
I think there's a good chance that he's back, yes.
Okay. And we haven't talked about the injury yet. I'm assuming we have nothing new or definitive on Bothwell?
No, Levy is scheduled to talk to the media tomorrow. I don't know if he'll say anything about that or not. He's been, in this, hey, I'll let the injury report talk for me, which there won't be in one of those for another, 10 days.
Yeah,
because Mississippi State's off this week. But that being said, I think if there's a long-term injury, he would probably go ahead and spell that out. That said, everything that I have heard from the people that I have talked to believe that they were very precautionary with what they did on Saturday night, getting him off the field, and that they believe he could be back this season.
Okay. It certainly looked bad.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you see the cart and all that.
When the cart comes out. But they did not put an air cast on his leg, so it was not some massive break where they're trying to stabilize the leg or anything like that. But they were extremely cautious. They did not want him to put any weight on that, which, I mean, you're just speculating, but it makes you think it's more than an ankle sprain. I mean, even if it's a severe sprain, they're probably not bringing the cart off onto the field to get the player off the field. But he's been, I mean, he and Devon Booth are both really good, but he's been the better of the two. What impact does that have? Because you've talked for a while now about the fact that, hey, Mississippi State's got two quality SEC running backs in Bothwell and Booth, but it's that combination of the two so far as opposed to just one of them.
It is, but I think that if State has to go Booth and Xavier Gayton, he's shown me enough to make me think he can be a quality number 2 back. Booth is more than capable of being the lead back, though, and getting 20 carries if that's what you need him to. And that's the luxury State has had this season. Bothwell's been really good, but Booth is really good as well. So if it comes down to that and they have to go more with Booth and let him carry the load a little bit more, he's perfectly capable of doing it.
Okay. C-Spire text line, somebody said, sources say he was in a boot after the game and sort of walking. Seems to be an ankle injury.
I believe that is correct.
I mean,
at least a lower body injury. We know that much.
Thank you, Joe.
Yeah, the boot, I mean, even if it was a minor injury and he was going to play this Saturday, he'd still be in one. So that's not exactly the best indicator.
Yeah.